Well, at BizNews, we've been following the Altvest story very closely, not just because we're business partners, but because one of our shareholders, Warren Wheatley, is the man who thought about it. Now we have a change in the board of directors at Altvest, and we'll be finding out from Warren why, and meeting the new chairman and another new director, both of whom are very well known to the BizNews community. Warren, Stafford, and GG, really good to have you all together. Thanks at such short notice, because you've only just made the changes. Warren, this is your brainchild, Altvest. It's been a little slower to start than we anticipated, and now you've grabbed it by the throat, and you're shaking it around, bringing in new people. Just tell us a story.
Right. So, Alec, it has been frustratingly slow, but we have had some hurdles that we had to get across. One of the biggest ones was that we realized quite quickly how constrained the retail investor is, particularly for an asset class that should only be a very small percentage of any investor's portfolio. So we realized quite quickly that we needed to access institutional capital as well. So we needed to be able to invest or allow investments by pension funds, provident funds, insurance companies, and the like. And quite simply, when you start accepting money from widows and orphans, you've got to make sure that your governance is top tier, and the team around who are entrusted with that, the privilege and responsibility of managing those assets, exhibit the highest levels of ethics, governance, and so forth. So we set about restructuring the board. I've got more board members than actual staff for now, but but I think that's a good thing. Each of the new team members were handpicked to drive a particular strategy vertical within the business. Stafford, as an example, is a technology expert, and technology is going to allow us for mass adoption and for entry points into all these other markets. GG knows his way around every kasi in the country. And we also want to go there. We want to change the direction that capital flows. We want it to stop flowing from the townships into the banks in Sandton. We want to start moving the capital from the banks in Sandton into the township economies. And he knows the route from there. And we're going to use technology. We're going to use education. We're going to use the structure we've built to do those things. We've got other board members as well who couldn't join today. Two other additions. One is Christo Gea. He's an actuary and has been in the investment game for almost all his life. And then Kaya Satoli, who's quite a esteemed accountant on top of IFRS and all the accounting standards, but is also a very popular current affairs commentator. So the two of them couldn't be with us today. Well, number one, we didn't know if Riverside could accommodate that many people. We also weren't able to align diaries, but they equally welcome, and each of them have been also deliberately handpicked for a particular role.
Warren, that's a great introduction. Stafford Masie and I have been friends for many, many years. He was on my board at MoneyWeb, and I venture to say that had GG been around at the time that I was at MoneyWeb, he would also have been on the board at MoneyWeb, as would you, Warren. So I can feel exactly where your thought processes are going. But Steph, you've got a lot on your plate. You at the CSIR, you've got your own business with Lisa, which we've spoken about a lot on BizNews. And of course, you're also on the board of Discovery Bank. So there's plenty going on in your life. Why become chairman now of Altvest?
A very good question.
When Warren approached me, it was a lot of thinking and a lot of deliberating. And I don't think so much about it from a time perspective. What I was really intrigued by was the company, the methodology that he had personified. I mean, this way of investing, the promise that it holds, it's a beautiful mechanism. That was really, really intriguing. Obviously, I've known Warren through the BizNews community too. This is where we met the first time, etc. Engaging from that perspective, and and circling on what the intention is of the business, where this business can go, and what this business could mean to the South African economy. The conviction that lies behind it really drove me. I think this is one of those things that I need to do that's outside of my capitalistic views in terms of my investments, etc. So yeah, it's a lot on the plate, but I think what Warren and the team have already built is simply a mechanism that requires the necessary leadership, a very clear vision around how we're going to execute that, a good governance framework, and I think then they will come. I don't think this is going to be a difficult one, and I think with the right team, which is now, I believe, is coalesced the proper mechanism. And I believe this is what it required to take that next step to that next level. And I'm excited about it. So when it came along, I've always get approached. As you know, I get approached to join many, many boards. But this was one where I felt it could have meaningful impact. And I could lean in and bring something to the table to really help the team to have that impact. So that was the driver, the conviction around what this could mean if we truly scaled this and had the impact that we are articulating in our slides and in our collateral. And if we do that, this will be worthwhile. This is not one of those, just another board that I'm joining. This is something that I fundamentally believe in. Growing up in Eldorado Park, in a township, understanding the economy from that very basis, all the way up to the larger businesses in South Africa. I think this is what's required right now. We've got to re-envision. We can't wait for government to catch up. We can't wait for someone to come along. I think this is one of those mechanisms, one of those platforms that reimagines, capital, reimagines capital participation in a way from a micro level all the way to a macro level. And that beauty of this model, the simplicity of it, is really, really intriguing. And that attracted me. And as chairman, I'll bring along the experience of the other boards that I've been on. I was on the board of Altvest for 7.5 years. And that's where I really learned what a board looks like of a traded, a listed company. And I learned a lot there. The Discovery Board is an incredible board too, with an incredible group of human beings. And hopefully, with this team, we can build something that has the proper structures that enables this team to do what they've already started, but really accelerate it.
Yeah, the dream is unquestionably visionary and very inspiring. It's been the execution, I guess, that's not always that easy. Particularly, it's a startup, and now we're seeing the startup growing up. You grew up, as you said, in Eldorado Park. I think Gigi's got one over you. He grew up in a mud hut in Msinga, so you also have a good feel, Gigi, as we know, and as you've shared with us both at the BizNews conference and in various interviews that we've had, better than anybody that I've come across, and I think clearly Warren as well, who understands the informal sector in South Africa. But it's your position on this board. What is the work stream, if you like, that you're going to be focusing on?
Cool. Well, I'm going to find out, I think, as we go along. But initially, I was quite reluctant because I was kind of like, I'm not a corporate person. I've started and run and sold a number of businesses, but I've never been in the kind of corporate space. And Warren and I had a couple of chats. And obviously my passion is about this entrepreneur sector and how the sector can be broadly, not just in the townships, but obviously my speciality is within that township space. And, as I've said many times, this is the future of economic activity. And it's a space that is ignored by the formal sector, or the traditional sector, I guess, more than the formal sector. And it just represents real economic opportunity for growing our economy as a whole, by catering for that. And one of the biggest problems with businesses in this space is their ability to scale up. And scaling up is in many ways more important than starting up, because there are so many of these businesses, some doing incredibly well and turning over substantial amounts of money, with very little access to growth and the ability to scale up, and alternative or kind of unique instruments that help them that way. Or even people who want to look at them as an audience. So for me, and I've written about this, about the opportunities to invest in and into finance into the sector. I've personally invested in businesses focusing on the sector, kind of putting my money where my mouth is. So I mean, it was kind of almost, it fitted my passion, it fitted my belief, more importantly, in the opportunities in this country for growing a sector and supporting a sector. So it was a kind of no-brainer, and I'm quite excited about it. Not only in terms of where the business is going, but I believe that I can really add something in terms of where this should go. So influence also the direction and the opportunities. And I have an extensive network both in the corporate sector as well as on the ground, as it were, within this kind of business. So on both sides of the spectrum, I'm probably very lucky in terms of a unique access to both, the formal traditional side, as well as the kind of dynamic, unique, informal, if that's the word. As you know, I hate the word informal, but the other end of the spectrum.
If you could bring some of the people that we've had interviews with from the Kasi economy, and if you could give them the capital, and we've seen the opportunities there. The lady, the guy, who does bakery, the lady who's building back rooms, which it sounds very low grade, but actually, how many she got now? How many back rooms?
Well, she earns 150,000 Rand rental a month, and she's building 30 more units where she'll earn about 3,000 Rand plus per unit. So, she's going to be earning 250, 300,000 Rand a month on her kind of humble little investment. And there's many others like that, So, you could focus on some of the smaller guys, but I think we often underestimate this. I went to I do a lot of work with the Heineken group, and we went to a tavern a while ago, and another tavern, kind of a little bottle store with a little hole in the wall kind of thing, and the rep said, "Well, this guy turns over about 300,000 Rand a month," and the guy was like, "No way! Look here," and he's got this device which tracks his sales, and he was turning over 900,000 Rand a month, minimum. This was kind of a hole in the wall little tavern, and he's like, "No, I've started a new store down the road," and he said, "I paid for it cash. I built the place and paid for it cash." And he's lucky he's got the cash to be able to do that. But people like that are wanting to extend their businesses, and what the opportunity is to really accelerate that.
So, Warren, this is, I see we've lost Stafford, but I'm sure he'll be back in a moment. This is a big divergence from where Altvest has been. And because so far you've got the Mnganu Lodge, which is a 40 million Rand project. And then the Bambanani Family Group was a 27 million Rand project. Now what GG is talking about, would you be able to use Altvest as a vehicle to maybe make smaller investments in growing or even Kasi type businesses?
Alec, the way I'm thinking about it, and I really shouldn't, but we're thinking about a portfolio of assets where we give you access to a portfolio of Kasi businesses as opposed to individual asset exposure. So you could think of it as a unit trust that is made up of 200 or 300 different businesses. And we think that would create sufficient diversification and risk mitigation mechanisms that allows for institutional capital to flow into that portfolio. The challenge with that is to make sure that the capital ends up where it needs to be, and that is in the treasuries of those various businesses. So we're designing the mechanics, we're structuring it, but it's unfortunately too expensive to raise capital for a single asset unless they need 10 million or more. And that's why we're looking at it from a portfolio approach. We'll have an equity portfolio where you can take equity stakes, or in fact, similar to the Altvest Credit Opportunities Fund, where you can have your exposure through a debt instrument. And, we give working capital loans to these businesses. So imagine a unit trust that's listed, and the makeup of that unit trust is hundreds of little businesses that are creating jobs, turning over cash. That's the vision and the dream.
Brilliant. And if you can get that right, like the business that was created in
the Grameen
Bangladesh, where they lent to a Grameen Bank, yeah. Is that kind of where you're thinking, GG?
Yeah, look, I'm not in that space, but it is certainly a model which has illustrated. I mean, they're one of the biggest banks in Asia, and yeah, it is that kind of model, I guess, of aggregating smaller businesses, as per what Warren's talking about. I mean, so I guess mine is, what's my vision? Me as Gasinomics and GG it may not always fit with where Altvest is, but I believe that the opportunity is there, and I think that the fact that Altvest is looking at these alternative type things and a kind of I guess a pipeline in terms of how we could reshape this kind of thing is what is exciting for me. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly these alternative kind of things have been shown in other parts of the world to be extremely successful.
Yeah, Grameen Bank. I met the chairman in Davos, that place that so many people think is a hive of evil, which in fact it's completely different. But anyway, and he was explaining to me how they got going by lending literally to a couple of $100 to ladies who could then buy a sewing machine, and so on and so forth. And as you say, one of the biggest banks in Asia. But Stafford, from your perspective, are you then going to be doing the discussions with the institutions, trying to get corporate South Africa to see the opportunity here? Because my goodness, we need something different, as all three of you have said so far.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a combination. I mean, it's kind of death by a thousand wounds here in addressing the problem. So yes, institutional investment, absolutely key in terms of unlocking that and enabling that. I think there is obviously the Kasi side of it, the township side of things, but I also think there's a broad ecosystem, even in the technology sector in South Africa, that will benefit from this platform. So as much as this is about the informal economy and unlocking the latent human potential and business potential, sure, I do believe there is mechanisms here for startups and entrepreneurs from the world where I come from to engage and utilize it. I mean, the problem that startups have in South Africa is access to capital. We don't have very mature VCs in South Africa. They don't really feel like venture capitalists. They feel more like private equity players. And so if you take a look at where in the stages that you are as an entrepreneur, if you're in that seed stage, that Series A, B, those rounds are very, very difficult in this environment. Yet we've got incredible entrepreneurs working on incredible things that could have global applicability. And me in my personal capacity, when I was a technology entrepreneur, starting up and inventing things, if I look through that lens at Altvest, if this mechanism existed, I think I could have raised capital a whole lot more quickly, with a whole lot less undue requirements and warrants that come from the traditional VC frame, right? And the access and participation in my business would have been much broader. So therefore, there could have been more of an economic uplift relative to the benefit that I saw from exiting or maturing or having that piece of technology or that thing being purchased. And I think that's the beauty here. So as much as this is the informal economy that we really want to light up and bring forward, I think there's an informality that also exists amongst the so-called more modern instrumentation that we see out there in the entrepreneurial field. And that's exciting for me. Absolutely. And then bringing large institutional corporates into this, sure, but not just South Africa. I was speaking to Warren in the week, and I think the opportunity is also to bring these multinationals. Us speaking to folks like Google, Meta, the larger technology companies. These folks are trying to personify African strategies within their businesses. They really struggle to participate economically on this continent, in South Africa, for many, many reasons. The capital structures don't really support true participation. I think what Altvest has built here is a mechanism that we could take to those institutions. And from that engagement, I think there's significant promise there. So strategically where we sit, I think this is global applicability. This is not just about South African capital being given the necessary liquidity and making it a little bit more frictionless. I think there's an opportunity here to really bring international players forward and enabling them to participate meaningfully, and clearly and simply in the South African space. And that's very, very exciting.
Warren, just to close off with, you've got the bruises. You've been at this now for a couple of years. It's been tough going. You've learned a lot, though. How is Altvest going to be different in future with all these new guys that you've brought on board to what it was in the past?
Alec, I think one of the things we want to show the market is that we take governance exceptionally seriously. And I've put a team around me that, acknowledge both the privilege and absolute responsibility of managing money and deploying it effectively into the pockets where it needs to go within the country. Fundamentally, it won't change. The platform is built. We've spent a lot of time designing how to deploy capital and how to collect capital in a way that any international entity can invest with comfort, and any South African entity can do the same. So we've built structures that are Reg 28 compliant, that meet the stringent regulatory hurdles. And so that's what's kept us busy. I've realized that, doing a range of small capital raises is not going to move the needle. We need to go big. We need to be bold, and we need to be more deliberate about how we do it. And that starts with the proper leadership team. And with Stafford, you've got me so excited now. I don't think I'll sleep for the rest of the weekend. But that's the kind of thinking I've tried to get around me. And with the team that's there, that have remained and who we've bolstered the board with, I think we're going to be able to demonstrate to the market precisely how capable we are of actually executing the vision. The system's built. I need the ambassadors now and the guys around me to just take it across South Africa and then anywhere else that it can travel to.
And the sounding boards. And I guess I did say that was to close off with, but how much time are you going to be able to, very quickly, guys, to allocate to this? Warren, how much time do you expect GG, Stafford, and the other two board members to be able to converse with you on it?
I think, time is when I want to do something, the time sort of magically appears. Right? I feel busy and not able to do the things that I don't want to do. Certainly in the discussions I've had with the guys, this seems something that they want to do. And I mean, in the last 2 weeks, we've had intense discussions. The time seems to have magically worked, just like this interview. So, these aren't full-time day jobs, but, I guess the guys, the passion will drive their involvement as opposed to time constraints. That's the way I see it, at least.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. So I think, in many cases, we're stuck in our day-to-day and then our passions get left behind. And there's a long-term thing. I call myself an economic activist, and part of that is how do I kind of advocate for economic transformation in a kind of in a way which really is business focused and so on. So yeah, I mean, because of my passion, certainly the commitment to throw my time into it is there. Yeah.
Yeah, I always think about, if not now, when? If not, it who? So someone's got to do this. Someone's got to lean in here. Yes, I've learned as a professional to manage time adequately. I feel that the Altvest team, and I want to echo what Warren said, has built a mechanism. I don't think this is about operational aspects that need to be overseen from a day-to-day perspective. I think this team requires the structures to be built. And I think that creates the opportunity for them to enter through the necessary doors to have the discussions and to execute against it. I mean, that's what I feel this business is. I don't think this is a business right now that's a startup from that perspective. I think they've built the platform, they've built the mechanism. It's about building the necessary. I mean, this is finance. You've got to be responsible, you've got to be accountable. And that's what my focus will be as chairman, is making sure that we don't, run blindly around chasing everything that glitters. It's about building the meat and potato structures so we can be a responsible business, an accountable business. But I think it's pretty easy from my viewpoint to take this mechanism to the next level. I don't think that's the complexity. I think what they've built, they've gone through that. Warren's been at this. He knows what this is all about. It's about opening those necessary doors, which we will assist him to do and the team to execute against. But I think right now the focus is, let's get this business matured up from a governance perspective and accountability and a transparency perspective, because what it promises is incredible, but it does require some housing that gives people the peace of mind that this is a great place to invest your money. And not when I say that, I mean the Ikasi owner, all the way through to the security guard that wants to diversify his portfolio. We're going to make that possible, all the way through to the largest technology companies that want to enter the African marketplace and do something. We want to be the platform, and I don't think that's going to be too difficult from the time perspective.
Stafford Masie, the new chair of Altvest, Warren Wheatley, GG Alcock, directors of the company, and I'm Alec Hogg from BizNews.com.